Hello students! So, I hope you had a nice week of vacation. I was thinking of filming myself along the Baywalk in Rojas Boulevard. So, to really emphasize the idea of what I would want to impart to you. But the thing is that it's really hot. So, I decided not to go on with that. Anyway, I would like to share with you a new lesson, and that is on global warming. If you remember well our lessons, we discussed about globalization and then democracy. And the very idea is that I wanted you to be acquainted with global networks. That is how we are immersed in global relationships. And then later on, with democracy, I want you to appreciate how we are part of a greater system that is in a local setup, um, local network. Now, we would want to envision ourselves really as more participative members of a global network, and that is of a planetary reality that is the world. And so our topic is about global warming. That's why I wanted to have myself discuss this thing along the Baywalk for you to have at least an idea, or at least the background is something nice. But it's really hot, so I did not pursue. So when we say global warming, very simple, it just means that the world has become warmer. It has become hotter. If you remember well, when you were younger, it's cold in the morning, but this past years, you've realized that it is not as cold as it used to be. Why is that so? Because according to scientists, the emission of carbon made our atmosphere warmer, because carbon is locked up in the atmosphere. So that is why it has become warmer. It's also very much like how greenhouse gases are locked or are trapped in the atmosphere. They are not released. That's why it has become warmer. Now, one consequence of global warming is climate change. And climate change technically is not the same as global warming. When we say global warming, technically it just means that the Earth has become warmer. It has become hotter. But when you say climate change, it refers to a lot of different things. Number one, it refers to the melting of the polar caps in the North Pole and in the South Pole. And if you read the news just recently, scientists are very worried that temperature now in Antarctica has reached a very alarming 20 degrees, and that's the warmest it has, the warmest temperature that was recorded in Antarctica. Aside from melting polar caps, seawater is also rising. They say it's around 18 inches already. So if you remember very well, there was a discussion in the past wherein I mentioned to you that Manila will soon be underwater around 2050, 2100. Manila will definitely be underwater because of the rising level of sea water or sea level. Also, it's not just the water is rising, it has become more acidic. Why? Because carbon has become more absorbed. It has been absorbed by water. So instead of the water just being salty, it has also become more acidic. And that would mean what? Creation of, well, it's also because of pollution. It also would result into the rusting of of ships and everything. Aside from that, aside from looking at melting polar caps, rising seawater levels, we also observe that many ice caps, the mountains used to be snow covered, they are now, the snow are melting, and it all results into what? Flooding, water shortages, stronger and more violent storm systems. So technically, the planetary problems that we have is not just limited to one place, but it is technically affecting the entire planet. They are saying the Philippines is foremost or one of the most affected by global warming. And we had observed, of course, in the past that we had been witness to stronger typhoons who will forget about Yolanda, who would forget about Glenda or Ursula. So you remember very well the storms we have here in the Philippines are becoming stronger, more violent, more destructive. Floods, they are also becoming more frequent. If you remember very well, in the past there would be years we will be suspending classes because of much heavier monsoon rains, and these are all because of global warming and climate change. Not only that, there are also very much abnormal weather patterns. Usually during summer we don't have rains, but now we have rains. It's either very cold or very hot. Now, well, I do not need to discuss them very in detail, because we are all witnesses to how we are all affected by global warming. Now, what I want to say to say after this is, what are we doing in order to solve the problem? Well, of course, the world, many countries in the world, particularly to the initiative of the United Nations, recognize the fact that we need to do something. And so the United Nations in 1992 organized what we call the United Nations Framework Agreement on on global warming. And so this particular framework agreement is an agreement among nations that they will be doing something in order to lower at least by 2 degrees, or at least to control under 2 degrees the impending change, or at least to level or to control at least by 2 degrees the increase of the temperature. So how do we concretize it? There are two ways through which this is concretized. Number one, there is what we call the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol has been the product of the United Nations Framework Agreement on Global Warming. So Kyoto Protocol, it legally binds all countries to at least do something to lower their carbon emission. And number two is the Paris Convention. The Paris Convention is that it just recognizes the fact that everyone is affected, and because everyone's affected, everyone has their different capacities, abilities to control the problem, to control their carbon emission. And so what they do is to just identify a certain quota, a certain target that each country has to meet in order to at least contribute to lessening carbon emission towards the atmosphere. So that is technically the overview of what global warming is and what we are doing. And so what I want you to write, less than 200 words, please email it to me, rbunyag@spcp.edu.ph. Please write, in what ways do you think are you personally affected by global warming? It's very personal reflection. And you just write anything. You just write how you are affected by global warming. And then, for our perf task, I just want you to look at, this will be the essay, 200-word essay. You email it to me, rbunyag@spcp.edu.ph. But scaffold number 2, that is scaffold number 2, for room 4, that's scaffold number 2. For room 5, this will be scaffold number 1, because we did not finish yet the construction of the National Cultural Treasure. But for scaffold number 2, both for room 5 and 4, you just have to identify how global warming is particularly threatening your identified national cultural treasure. You write it on 1/2 crosswise as a group. You work on it as a group, and then you submit it to me on Thursday. Okay, thank you. Bye.